And welcome to Failcast FM Radio with your delightful hosts from the English side of the pond. It is Mr. Bolkenberg, and from the English/German Angela Merkel side of the pond, it is our Mexican taco friend, Mr. Definitely Zero. How you doing, mate?
Hello, buddy. I'm good. It's a wonderfully dark and rainy day in Berlin, so it's a pretty good day to be sat in here doing this. Other than that, I'm absolutely terrified because it's the one, isn't it?
It's the one. It's the one that we all dread because we know. I suppose if anyone's watching this either live or on countback, whilst we do spout our usually strangely correct opinions on Formula One, I feel like you should all have a drinking game of shots for end plates.
Yeah, every time you lose an end plate or one of us loses his train of thought. Because in preparation for this, I've looked back at some of the Monaco Grand Prix we've driven in the last 8 years.
Oh God!
And we have finished some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them. But it's a minority of them, and it's quite often that one of us is making what to the listener, as me, seems like a really good point, and I'm like, oh, finish this thought, it's very interesting, and then you just go, bah, and forget it.
So don't expect the most crispest of thoughts today, whilst we attempt to survive El Monte Carlo, which is just as well because there's not, well, I mean, there's the ongoing sagas that we have been commenting on for many months. And a few interesting things about the future, but thankfully no earth-shattering decisions that we have to have full concentration discussion on. So that's just as well.
No, that is true. And why don't I kick things off as we'll dive into quali?
Yeah.
I'll kick things off because I was just taking a look at tickets for the Monaco Grand Prix.
Ooh.
Because it's one of the sort of four that are easiest for me to get to from where I am. And it's the glamorous one, isn't it? It's the one.
Yeah.
Do I want to go for a softer tyre mix? Since I have to stop all the time.
I'm going to stay balanced because I find that I have so much more confidence on the ultra soft. But even if that does mean that I will meet the barrier more often because I get exuberant.
Now, what we've been talking, a few of us here, and I was going to pick your brains about it at some point because I'd love to have you there, is we were thinking of going to the Red Bull Ring for the Austrian Grand Prix. Because out of the European rounds that were a part of this season, it seems to be the most affordable one.
Okay.
But also, Spa's up there on the list.
Mm-hmm.
The German Grand Prix, which you think would be cheaper for someone in Germany, actually isn't. And down in Monaco. And I took a look at the tickets for the Monaco Grand Prix and some of the packages. And I have to say, it was a bit irresponsible of FOM to put up a banner that says VIP packages from €285 per person, right? And for any sporting event, that is quite pricey. Is it not? So you'd think, sure, VIP.
Yeah,
get in there.
Violate.
And those tickets are not only not that price at all, but they're also sold out. And they were tickets for Thursday practice only.
Oh,
because that's what you travel
for.
No, genuinely, you are looking like the cheapest combination of tickets that were still available that are sort of you actually would want to watch from there would be cheap tickets for qualifying, €275 per person in one of the grandstands. I think at Raskas, and then there's a ticket for the main grandstand for Sunday, and that is €579.
Oh.
And then, of course, you've got like food and hotel and all that jazz.
It's not as if you can sail in on the harbour and be like, "Yeah, go back to England for dinner," is it?
Well, actually, I can tell you the yacht tickets are surprisingly affordable, but of course you have to have afforded a yacht beforehand, so, your mileage may vary.
Could I just turn up in a pedalo? Hired from the Spanish seas. Only be a few hours, mate. What's that? 10 euro an hour? Yeah, fuck it. Oi, oi, oi. Bring me a tinny.
I still would really love to go one day. I just can't. I mean, by the time you've paid for food and drinks and everything, and I've been to Monaco before now, not for the Grand Prix, but I've been in Monaco, so I know how expensive it is just to have a glass of cola there. Oh, was that you? You've already done your outlap.
Yeah, I need to get me eye in.
You cheeky monkey. First kiss for the barrier.
Oh God. Oh, now me. Hello, casino. That's crazy though, because so my only claim to ever being anywhere near Monaco is someone that I used to work with knew that I was a massive F1 fan, and they had gone to the 2006 Monaco Grand Prix and gave me their programme of that event when they retired. So I've kept it in a little sleeve. 90% of it is adverts in French, but there's some really, really badly broken English profiles of different drivers. I'll have to bring it out for a later edition because where it's clearly done through early prototype of Google Translate, it says things like Vitantonio Liuzzi, things like nice new driver, looking good, needs to show pace or something, ? And I was like, how did this get published as an official document? It's really bad. And that would annoy me more that it's part of if it was part of a VIP package. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always expected it would be one of the priciest events, and you've been to Silverstone, right? So
yes,
I guess
that was ridiculous.
And again, popular event, so going to be pricey.
Yeah. There's such a disparity though, because I know some people who it'd be worthwhile talking to from the sim racing world, because some of the Dutchies quite often go to the Red Bull Ring for that race, and some of the views that they get, because you can kind of walk around the perimeter and get some really nice vantage points. You could probably get quite a lot of different views over the course of the weekend if you got a weekend ticket. But
I heard that about Spa as well, that you can actually walk most of the track.
Yeah. And then I think they do
too
walk
fat
the
for
track.
that, obviously, but
start off at Eau Rouge and hope there's a travelator. Boop, boop, boop.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'll get you some names of some Dutchies. It's usually the Dutchies or my European chums that will be able to help you out with vantage points for that. But there's such a disparity between event prices for F1 and so on and so forth, because I remember you said that the Formula E event was absolutely amazing and dirt cheap.
Yes, it was. And I think, obviously, we're comparing apples to oranges, right? Because Formula E doesn't have the following that F1 has and doesn't have the prestige.
No.
But, and obviously it doesn't have the bill for competition that comes with it. But, our second news item that's coming up shortly is going to be about Ferrari. And maybe the byproduct of whatever they decide to do is that people like you and me have to pay less to attend the Grand Prix.
Yes.
Which, I'm hopeful about. Because, at least at the Red Bull Ring, they seem to be making a concerted effort to make it accessible to people and have a good attendance.
Mm-hmm.
Other the Grand Prix, particularly the more prestigious ones, they don't feel the need to do that, and I guess I can't really fault them for it, because look at the attendances.
Yeah.
Silverstone sells out every year.
Yeah,
I believe it's sold out every year since 1995. So it's hard to tell them, no, you can't charge £1,500 for a weekend ticket, because they sell out when they do. So,
I think when I went in 2014, It was a birthday present for my 30th from the partner I was with at the time. So I don't know the exact prices, but I swear on the ticket it was I think it was 185 for a 3-day event, because it was essentially 180 for the race, or you could have like an extra tenner and have quali and everything else as well at the same time. So it's like, yeah, screw it. But then obviously you've got like the hotel. Silverstone's in the middle of nowhere, so we then had to pay 35 quid for a bus service that would pick you up and stop you. But the last bus happened before the GT event finished, so if you're trying to say, I'll get value for money for all the races, you can't unless you camp. And that's, I guess,
you
why
can't
everyone...
unless you can. That should be the slogan for F1.
Yeah, you can't.
It should be the slogan for ticket sales. You can't unless you can.
Yeah, unless you can camp. Sorry, not can. But I like that as well. But it's just, it means that it forces you into like a way, and then like my ex would never have camped for an F1 race because he's not an F1 person, and it's such a steep entry point for someone who's like, oh, cars, do I even like this? Oh great, I've now got to wallow in my own shit for the weekend. Oh, no, that's you. I was going to say, someone just went into the barrier, but did you miss it?
I didn't. I kissed the barrier. I was in the same postal district as the barrier temporarily, but we didn't actually make contact. I didn't touch your governor.
Oh, how very Hollywood of you.
Yeah, I'm the Kevin Spacey of Formula One. Oh, I completely messed up that corner.
That's alright, I've done it worse.
God, I'm so slow here. It's embarrassing. I haven't even set a time yet. I'm not going to get out of Q1 at this rate. Ah, no. It's an end plate gone.
Ah! It's only qualifying and we've hit each other.
I was holding you up. I need to come in though now. I've lost my wing again.
Same. Racia. This is the level of amazement this is going to be.
Have you set a time yet?
Yeah, 17th though, because I bungled it, which is why I wanted to go again.
I haven't set a time yet. I don't know how much time I've got left. So, I might be dead last.
That's alright, because then that means you avoid the turn 1 carnage.
Yeah, that is true.
There is method to the madness, I'm sure.
But the weird thing is that I could do it earlier. I think it's now I know I'm being filmed.
Oh, performance anxiety. This is men.
Exactly.
Know what's happening in your life.
Well, I mean, according to the Gmail adverts I get, there are some pills to help with that.
If you take this pill, you can save 2 seconds on your lap time. May cause heart palpitations, blah 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 blah. And, but during that whole advert, you don't see a car out on track. You just see a middle-aged woman on a beach in a cardigan against the wind.
Yeah, smiling into the wind.
Yeah, sponsored by Cialis. Hello, NASCAR. So
Right
talking
then.
of this 100 of our point 2 around potentially lowering prices because of the ongoing costs of Formula One, I think that brings you quite neatly onto point number 2 that you wanted to make.
Yeah. So this stems from, and I'm doing it in a weird order, but there is a reason for that. There is, I might as well change tyres since I'm here. There is a proposal on the table at the moment for 2021 and beyond engine regulations. And that's the main meat and potatoes of the episode, so I'm going to bring that in later. But there are some other provisos in there about some fundamental changes to the sport. And one of them is, and again, this is to some degree speculatory, but it is something that Liberty have spoken openly about in the past. And I could see it being true in both cases. And that is that Liberty no longer want to pay Ferrari their bonus to their heritage payment. In fact, I believe they want to do away with heritage payments altogether.
Oh, okay.
Which I agree with, as long as the system remains as it is and Sauber don't get any heritage money. 25 years in the sport and they don't qualify as a heritage team. How is that?
What? I didn't know that.
Yep, true fact.
Disgrace.
Renault is a heritage team. Renault, Williams, McLaren, Ferrari, and... Want to take a guess?
Red Bull?
Yes.
Fuck off.
And people wonder why the small teams complain so much.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, Renault I can sort of understand, right? Because it's the Enstone team.
Yeah, and that's been around since 80s, if you think of, like... They're in and out, shake it all about, but they have been around for a while.
Yeah, but by that measure, Force India are not that much younger.
No, only, 7 years or so? Tolman was 84.
Tolman was 84, and Jordan took up... Well, they entered in 91, but they were there since 1990.
Oh, hello, James Angley. I didn't realise you was watching there. He said something about... Yeah, 1981 for Renault, yeah.
But Ferrari gets a payment of somewhere in the region of 100 million a year for being Ferrari. And that was negotiated by the Burnster, and it was on the basis that for a long time it was considered there was no Formula One without Ferrari. They brought the fans, they sold the merchandise. I mean, they are still to this day the most popular team on the grid. And so it was a concession he made because he believed they added more value to the sport by being there than it cost to pay them that. These days, I don't believe that's any... I don't believe it's necessarily true, or at least not as true as it used to be.
No.
And Liberty basically don't want to pay that money to them. And can you imagine how much money could be saved and given to other teams by just knocking 100 million off straight away?
It's another 4 cars on the grid, isn't it, really?
Yeah. But, of course, that means Ferrari throw their toys out of the pram. They're doing so under the guise of the engine regulations, which we're going to get onto later. And all the manufacturers, bar Honda, are actually upset about the new regulations in one way or another, and I can't for the life of me figure out why. But regardless, staying on topic, Ferrari have said, well, if these proposals go through, then we will be leaving the sport. And of course they've threatened that a lot in the past, and people now are saying, well, yeah, go on, you say it all the time, do it if you're going to do it. And I think those people are misjudging the situation rather badly. Because before, Ferrari wanted concessions within the rules. Now, what we're talking about is a genuine financial impact on being in the sport. And what Sergio Marchionne has said is, well, it sounds extreme, but if I took Ferrari out of Formula One, I'd be the most popular CEO of recent memory. The shareholders would love me. And I believe that's true, because suddenly they're going to have to find 100 million a year to continue to compete at the level that they're at. Mm-hmm. And given the level that they're at isn't winning, I mean, I could actually see them walking. And as much as I kind of think that would be extremely regrettable, because you don't just lose a team, you also lose an engine supplier. I'm wondering if it would have quite the dramatic effect on the sport that it would have had if they'd done it in the 90s.
I guess it's the whole... It brings up the wider question of, is Formula One bigger than Ferrari? And I would say yes, but only until Red Bull leaves. because Red Bull are bigger now to Formula One than Ferrari is, because of just how much everything is linked into that energy drinks company. So I think actually Ferrari's foothold in being able to negotiate is much weaker with Red Bull's great contribution to the sport.
Yeah, which again is under threat, right? Because they're going to be forced to use Honda power units, which is not going to go down particularly well. They've basically killed off their own driver development program through incompetence or overconfidence.
Which they're all kind of saying is leading up to Helmut Marko announcing a retirement, and that's why he's kind of killing bits off as he goes. But surely a driver development program and everything to do with Formula One should, if they see genuine return on investment on it, it shouldn't be just a one man declaring that this is good and this is not good, if that makes sense.
It does. I don't know. I've never liked Marco Helmut very much.
No, that's right.
I'm out in Q1, by the way. I just cannot hook it together.
You're in at the moment. Before, obviously,
no,
the
16th.
AI. Oh, Christ.
I am. What's up?
No, it's okay. I was I was cross-eyed for a second. I saw you ahead of Palmer.
Where did you finish
behind.
there? 13th.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not a million miles apart.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Incidentally, though, this is still my fastest lap ever at Monaco.
Oh, wow.
Because I did a 1:17 earlier, but I was on easier AI. It's funny actually how small the margins are. I was playing on AI 60, I think, which is 15 points lower than this, and 1:17 was good enough for third.
Oh, wow.
So once you get above sort of 60% difficulty, actually the margins become really narrow.
Which kind of,
anyway,
I guess, makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, I can sit and watch you now, and I can do the bulk of the talking, and I can maybe get a coherent point out before we go to the race. Let me find my old buddy. There we go. Okay, so back onto the topic. I genuinely could see Ferrari walking away in this case. The financial cost is significant. They're already spending hundreds of millions a year. I don't think they necessarily want to spend any more. Ferrari represents, the Ferrari F1 team, I mean, represents for them a massive hole in their profit loss account. Now, the brand is still profitable in and of itself, but it wouldn't hurt to save. You know, if you can go on a savings program of 300 to 400 million a year, it's certainly going to make your share price look a bit stronger, isn't it? And do Ferrari necessarily benefit in terms of car sales through Formula One, or do they make car sales because they are Ferrari? And I think it's probably option B. And what disturbs me a little bit, I suppose, is that I can't figure out if I'd missed them or not.
I don't know if I would either, actually. I mean, I know, we have a fondness towards the middle and back end of the grid, I guess.
We do.
So maybe our opinions are slightly less mainstream, but I think for us, sometimes I just wish that it's the boy that cried wolf. You shout and scream so many times that I don't actually listen to what you have to say anymore. So from a political standpoint, they're probably more toxic than good. I think I'd miss them on track, but I don't have like Ferrari running through my blood, and I don't get all excited because something is a Ferrari. I just go, oh, it's the red cars. And that, for me, it's more the lamenting of two less cars on the grid for no particular reason. You'd imagine if Ferrari walked out, someone would snap up all of their stuff and take over, you'd think.
You would, but I mean, it's very rarely happened in the past, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you take Minardi out of the picture, which was a Bernie orchestrated takeover.
Yep.
Or the first time Ligier was bought by Flavio Briatore and Tom Walkinshaw purely to steal their engines.
Yeah.
Which should never have been allowed to happen. I'm sorry, that deal should have been banned. I was angry at the time, and I was a child. No, because you and I, we've both been fans of Ligier in their day, and they were finally looking to come good, and they got bought, had their engines stripped from them and given to Benetton, and then run as a joke, basically until Alan Prost bought them.
Yeah.
So I suppose actually that was a precursor of what Red Bull did with Minardi to some extent. But taking those two sort of blips or abnormalities out of the picture, if you look at teams that have been bought as going concerns, you have Prost in 2001, not allowed to compete.
Yeah.
You have Tyrrell in 97, 98, and they went on to become BAR, but they had an extended period of building up time.
Yeah.
Stewart went to Jaguar, which went to Red Bull. I don't know, actually, maybe. I mean, I was queued up here to give you lots of examples of teams that have been ripe for sale and either not been bought or bought and collapsed anyway. So, Prost, Arrows. Arrows was a going concern, nice factory, no one stepped in.
Yeah.
New team on the grid 2 years later. I could have bought them but didn't.
Yeah.
And it's been the same story with Caterham Manor or HRT. I mean,
yeah, well, their stuff's been auctioned off, hasn't it?
Yeah, like if you're thinking of entering Formula One, taking on one of these teams would save you. I mean, maybe you have to take on a certain level of debt, but you save a lot of the hassle and time spent on recruitment and sourcing equipment, a lot of the setup overheads. Oh, that was a barrier kiss.
I was ahead of him at that point.
And so, I think what we see throughout the history of the sport actually is that a lot of times where it makes sense to buy a team that exists, people have stubbornly created one out of nothing, and then it's collapsed like a flan in a cupboard. Ferrari, I think it would be a smart purchase, I suppose, if you were interested in entering Formula One, but you have to have the budget to keep it operating at the level it's at, and that's a bigger ask. And of course, the other factor there is could you ever really rebrand Ferrari F1?
Yeah, because you'd forever live in the shadow, I guess, of what that used to be, and people being overly sentimental, and then going, oh, this team, these people, they used to be used to winning championships, blah, 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 bollocks, bollocks, bollocks. And then if they come in and they're like 9th and 10th on the grid, then that's considered a dramatic failure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the only team that anyone else does that with is you and me with Toro Rosso.
Yes.
Because we were huge Minardi fans. But no one, no one ever looks at Mercedes and goes, "Ooh, Tyrrell's doing well."
No, I get you mean. Yeah.
Like, even though Tyrrell's a legendary name in the sport, like the Mercedes of today does not seem congruous with the Tyrrell of the 90s or the 80s. Whereas Ferrari, I think, is just such a behemoth. Like, you couldn't put a new name above the door. But also, it represents a very stark turnaround, doesn't it? Because it was only recently Ferrari were very excited about funding a junior team.
Yes.
They wanted to bring Alfa Romeo into the sport in some capacity. And then suddenly, for the sake of 100 million, it's all thrown up in the air. And I appreciate Liberty Media's position here because it's a tough call, right? It's a tough call. You're being held to ransom. And it's the same thing Silverstone's trying to do. And as much as I want them to renegotiate with Silverstone, and Silverstone should be a profitable event, I'll be honest, a little part of me, just a small part, agrees with the people who say, well, they signed the contract under those terms.
Yeah.
So that's not really F1's fault.
If you knew that wasn't profitable and you weren't going to survive, then that's your own stupid commercial brain not actually thinking of being fit for purpose. You need to survive until it's able to be renegotiated, and off and away you go. Because then otherwise, what is the point of ever actually signing a contract at all? You might as well go down the pub, have a piss up, and then just go, oh yeah, we'll turn up here next year and we'll pay you X amount of ticket sales. Bye. And then how can you run a business like that? Yeah.
Exactly, you can't. And then, you know, obviously, let's be honest, Liberty Media want a British Grand Prix and they want it at Silverstone. It's insanely popular.
Yes.
It's good for the sport. They want it, but they can't be seen to be weak here and they can't just cave in.
No. And they've got a very difficult line, I think, to tread, because at the moment they're seen as, particularly if you look at the YouTube comments, like they put up a picture of someone farting and everyone's like, oh, thanks Liberty Media, oh, you guys are so cool. And they're seen as being like this gatekeeper of opening everything up and being the happy, joyful man. But it's a business and they need to make sure that people still know that they mean business beyond opening up a sport and appearing to be friendly with the mustachioed man in his ginormous hat.
Yes. Speaking of the Walrus, I have to say, I was very sceptical of the takeover when it happened. I think it was time for Bernie to go, but I was unsure about it falling into, particularly, I'll be honest, American corporate hands, just because I've never had the feeling that they truly understand the sport. But I tell you what, I have to give credit where it's due. I think, you know, obviously they haven't done a huge amount yet, but I think Liberty Media have shown a lot of good faith, at least, in the plans for the future. And I think that's probably why I'm inclined to side with them on this. Because, you know, because they can't be held to ransom by Silverstone, and they can't be held to ransom by Ferrari. Because what happens if Red Bull say, well, we're going to pull both our teams out unless you give us a rebate on our entry fees?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like,
we bring double the cars, we bring all of the fun events, we bring a driver program that is propping up a quarter of the grid. Yeah.
So I think I should sort of reiterate my point more clearly. I don't want to see a Formula One without Ferrari, but I would rather have that than have a situation where teams like Force India are struggling to keep the lights on, even though they're fourth in the Constructors' Championship 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
That tells you something is broken in the sport.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that 100 million, I mean, even just divided between everyone, give everyone 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a huge difference for a team like Sauber.
Yeah, that would push them back into competitiveness to some degree. What was it? Mana operated on 35 million a year. That could have been another 2 cars on the back. If they were still on Mercedes engines, they would be in amongst the field.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Mana went under for the sake of $10 million.
Yeah.
That's why they went under, because they were in line for $10 million prize money, and they said, well, the team can work with that. And then Sauber got those points, and bye-bye Mana. And, you know, if it was just as easy as taking a little bit off Ferrari's table and putting it back down the grid, it seems a no-brainer to me.
And wouldn't you think, like, for all of Red Bull corporate evilness, they do talk a lot openly about making sure that the sport's more competitive, and Mercedes seem to, at least from Toto's side of the fence, seems to also have this kind of want of having closer races. I still want to win, obviously, but just by the closest margin possible. You never hear that from Ferrari, particularly, of we want happier Formula One. I never hear of them talking about Formula One and the sport. It's always about Ferrari and how no one is bigger than Ferrari and this, that and the other. Almost like they feel, I suppose that's why they feel like the 100 million is such a thing that they deserve, almost, because they have decided to grace themselves on Formula One.
It's something. It's a characteristic they share with McLaren, actually. I think it's a characteristic that's shared by the big old teams where this wasn't a thing. It's almost. I mean, I know it wasn't true, but it's almost as if throughout, you know, the earlier decades of Formula One, the viewing figures didn't really matter because it was a private money game. And the fact the fans were there was just, well, it's some media exposure, but who really cares? I know it isn't quite as black and white as that, but if you think about it, teams like McLaren, Ferrari, even Williams actually, even Williams, now I think about it, the ones that have really been around the block, they never talk about making F1 fair. Or they never talk about making F1 a better show or more entertaining. I mean, even Claire Williams, actually, I've never heard her make suggestions like that. Although what I will say is I believe it's much more of a genuine wish from Mercedes than it is from Red Bull, because Red Bull are the sort of team I feel to say that. Yes. But then what we saw is when do you remember they were threatening to pull out in 2014, they were threatening to pull out just before they got their dominant period because they weren't happy with the formula. Yeah. Whereas Mercedes put their money where their mouth is, to their credit. I mean, I still see them as a sort of a cold, soulless corporate marketing machine.
Yes.
Like, I wouldn't want to work there.
No.
And I have no love for the team. I wouldn't miss them if they weren't there.
No.
But they do at least put their money where their mouth is. They have engineers paid by them on the ground in Sakura to help Honda get their engine competitive. There's also rumours, although no one's confirmed or denied it, that they've been helping Renault with their engine. And to be honest, that shows a certain level of intent to respect the sport. Yeah. And I guess they've become very aware in their marketing department that they're not actually gaining a lot of prestige by winning, because it's seen as, the car engine is so good that there's not really a competition there. They're not fighting hard to win. I don't think that necessarily does justice to them.
No,
but
no.
I think that is a pervasive feeling, actually, and I think they're acutely aware of it.
Yeah,
because I think you and I internally probably feel the same way. Look
yeah,
at you in Q3.
I don't know how that happened. Pure fluke. Pure fluke. I reckon it did get through. Okay. But sorry about that. I didn't expect to get through. I just assumed that I'd be out in Q2.
No, it's good, right? Because it means that I can actually present the show.
There's cohesion before the crashing carnage that happens.
Yeah, I mean, would you agree with that? Do you sort of feel like...
Yeah, I think as soon as you get past like one or two seasons of competitive dominance, so you'd have had like 1992 when Nigel Mansell won in that Williams, and that Williams was so ridiculously far ahead of everyone else. It's a novelty for a season. Then in 1993, when that Williams comes out and it's just as dominant with Amnon Prost and Damon Hill, but everyone's a bit closer, everyone's like, bored now. And so you had the same in 2014 with Mercedes being so ridiculously out front. Thankfully, you had two drivers at least having a spat with each other, so that kept it vaguely amusing. 2015, we're quite bored of this now. 2016, please help me God. 2017, oh look, thank Christ, F1 is great again because it's two rivals from different teams and there's potentially 4 cars, maybe 6 towards the end of the year. And I bet when people look back on the wins that mean the most or the wins that impress them, it's never the dominant ones where people are swimming away out in front. It's where you've had the dogged wins where you've just gone through and won by a hair's breadth. And they carry more weight because you've had to battle your way through, not serenely go from lights to flag out front.
That ties in very nicely then to we should take a moment to acknowledge our new world champion. One Mr. Hamilton.
Congrats.
See, it's so expected and so regular that you're like, oh yeah, he's a champion. I forgot, because you do.
Yeah.
But obviously, congratulations to him. Very well done.
Uh-huh.
But I have an attitude towards this very similar to how his fans felt about Nico Rosberg's title last year. Which is, if I'm honest, in my heart of hearts, and I do rate Lewis as one of the all-time greats, don't get me wrong, but in my heart of hearts, there's a little part of me that thinks, did he win it? or or did or did Vettel lose it in Singapore?
I think
Because
I think Vettel lost it rather than Hamilton won it, but I think it was more
that's
to
exactly
do with,
what I mean.
I think it's a psychological win versus lose rather than a talent win versus lose, which then probably had a knock-on effect with reliability and so on and so forth at the time. I think what would be really, really interesting is that if Hamilton, that question will be much, much greater if Hamilton now doesn't score for the rest of the season and Vettel gets 2 wins. Because it's always, I've always wondered, like, if someone wins a championship by like round 15 and then just doesn't bother to score for the rest of the season, and actually there's only like a 2-point margin at the end. Like, if people redone the races in a different order, you could tell a much more different championship. And if, say, Vettel and Ferrari had all of those mechanical problems and stuff at the beginning of the year, quite how much of a different championship it would show, I guess.
Well, I mean, for me, it's very interesting to hear you say that, because I agree. And if you look at historically his form, actually, if he's won before the final round, he does tend to go off a bit.
Yes.
And not just him specifically, I think it's happened with other drivers as well, that they tend to go off the boil a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that we've made lots of correct predictions down the years.
Yes, we have.
But I don't think either of us would ever have predicted Lewis Hamilton winning a psychological battle.
No,
because
that is such a
he's
good
always
point.
been the psychologically frail one.
He's
always been undoubtedly talented, but he's so emotional and it's so up and down, and he can go from a huge amount of self-confidence to being completely devoid of confidence.
As
very
shown
quickly.
in the Mexican Grand Prix.
Yes, exactly.
Do you know? Does that win like the most stroppy-arsed bitch title winner ever? He just cried on all the way through, and I guess for me it then made me feel like all of the joy at the end, #blessed, as James has already popped in the chat, that then comes across like really fake because of how bipolar it is, and I'm sure it wasn't fake, but it's that kind of moment that just makes me go, oh, I'm sure I would like you so much more if you just wasn't mentally unstable at all times. Because there's no denying the guy's a talent, and actually I'd really like to know your opinion on, I can't remember which British tabloid it was, but they put up Lewis Hamilton, the greatest British driver of all time. Would you agree or disagree with that sentiment? It's clearly not me as I smash into the barrier.
Oh, that is actually an excellent question, because usually when he's put amongst the all-time greats, I've always been reluctant to allowing that, because, I mean, I'll be honest, it's just because the Mercedes is so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Like, when he won his championship at McLaren, to me, that stood out as like a genuine accomplishment, because it was so down to the wire.
Yeah.
But the last few years, up until this year, it was always going to be one of the guys in a silver car.
Mm-hmm.
And if it had been Jenson Button there, if it had been Vittorio Liuzzi there, they would have won it, because the car was just above and beyond. But at the same time, seasons are longer now than they've been ever before, so it actually takes a greater level of consistency over the course of a season to win a championship these days. So I kind of want to give him credit for that as well. But for me, it's really hard to say, because if you look at it comes down to 3, right? For me, I want to put Jackie Stewart in there, but I don't feel that I can, for the same reason that the Tyrrell that he was driving was just a monster. So if we put it down to Mansell, Hamilton and Hill, if you look at Damon Hill's start to win ratio, he's won a huge percentage of his races that he started, comparatively speaking. At the same time, Mansell, aside from being a dickhead, was incredible. And for a guy who was never supposed to make it, it's kind of a feel-good story kind of thing. But I think you're hard-pressed really to argue that he probably is actually the best British driver of all time.
So for me, there is one person that I'd like to chuck into that kind of box, and I suppose it's why for me. Too much. Oh, no, we're still good. Over the line. Yeah. Still last. It felt like such a good lap, and then I proper
got
as
well, mate.
Okay. That final corner, I tell you what, I could not even swing my arse like that on a dance floor. My rear end was going. For me, Jim Clark is one of those ones where you're a bit like, it's that age-old problem of how can you compare people across decades and things like that. And it's so of media of today to kind of just get on that hype train. I think he is certainly in our top tier of the very, very best, begrudgingly, I think sometimes. How many more titles do you think he'd get?
I could see him, if Mercedes keep delivering the car, I could see him equaling or beating Schumacher. It depresses the hell out of me to say that, but I think he's at Mercedes for life now, and as long as Mercedes keep delivering, he'll keep picking up the titles because it's relatively easy.
I agree.
But if Mercedes go off the boil, which, let's be honest, they can't really get too much wrong until 2021, that is enough years between now and then for him to equal Schumacher's 7.
Yeah.
He's already talking about extending his contract, which he never normally does this early in the season. I think he's feeling confident about next year as well, and I honestly believe that rather than trying to find a seat at another team, if Mercedes go off the boil, he'll just go and be a rap star.
And that's what I think
in his own mind.
In his own mind, he won't sell. But yeah, he'll have because I think that's what his new. You remember he was alluding to like big plans for next year, and it's all secret squirrel. It's going to be a horrific pop star career that will not go anywhere and will tank horribly. And maybe he'll try and do it alongside driving, and depending on where he charts will depend on where he is on the grid.
Oh, like Ferrari and road cars.
Yeah.
They only do good in Formula 1 when the road cars are garbage.
Yeah.
But I could also see him doing something like guest starring on The Walking Dead or something. I think it'll be hugely American centric. That's my honest feeling. He'll go and be on Game of Thrones or something. But yeah, the only reason I don't include Jim Clark in that comparison is, well, firstly because again, it's such a gap in time that the cars don't really compare, but it's also because he was only with us for a very short time.
Yes.
And if you judged Romain Grosjean based entirely on the 2013 season, you'd give him sort of a 8.5, 9 out of 10, wouldn't you?
He would never need a cookbook.
He would never need to release a cookbook with his wife. But here we are in 2017, and that boy needs a good cookbook.
Grosjean's Goujons. Oh, it writes itself.
I bet that's in there. Page 2. And then it's 140 pages of drop cakes.
I love that.
I actually laughed out loud at that joke the other week. I was reading my own tweets back to me.
Oh dear.
But actually, before we get onto the other stuff, Grosjean is a good leeway into a question for you. This year, do you think has been a year of redemption for K-Mags?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. I've been quite impressed by him.
Quite quietly, slowly but surely. I was unimpressed at the beginning of the season, whilst he got into things. But actually, he's been the quietly getting on man that everyone loves to hate. But he's been showing up, little Mr. Romain Grosjean, of late, with some point scores, some dastardly overtakes, and less bitching on the radio over a car that team are desperately trying to work out how to make right for him. And he's just got on with it, which I think is quite nice. And apparently the team love him, didn't they?
Yeah, they do. And if they don't, well, they can suck his balls. He's genuinely impressed me, particularly. I was impressed with him hugely at Singapore. Because we were all eyes on K-Mags, right, when he was the first guy to put on dry tyres.
Yeah.
And as he was coming out of the pits, and I could see that the pit exit, because no one drives on it, was still soaking wet, and I thought, ooh, this could end very, very badly. And he touched the power, and I saw the car squirm, and he held it, and out he goes and puts the fastest lap of the race down. And, it took me back to when he first debuted for McLaren, and he was incredibly impressive in his first few races. If you remember, he got was it a podium on his debut?
Yes, it was. Yeah, he got second, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think we all forgot how good he was always supposed to be. And now we're starting to see just glimmers of it. That he strikes me as maybe a more successful Brendan Hartley in Formula One terms. Obviously, Brendan Hartley is incredibly successful elsewhere.
Yeah.
In that he too wasn't ready for F1 when he first got there, but I think he's starting to be ready.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from. Absolutely. I think where Haas need to sort themselves out slightly is that team, because of Esteban Gutierrez was so abominably crap when it wasn't on one lap, anything other than one lap pace. The team automatically has built itself around Grosjean, and you've got that kind of making sure that the team becomes actually proper half-assed across like both the drivers. And I guess that's probably gone over the course of the season as K-Mag has had to kind of prove his worth early on, which he's done, and now I think it's two proper sides of the garage, and he's getting his equal share of goods, I think, now, which I think helps him show his worth.
Honestly, I can't figure out why Grosjean stays there, except for the fact that he's got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
But if I was Haas, I'd actually be, if I'm serious about staying in F1, and again, that's something I kind of doubt about Gene Haas, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just want to say, we called it, them being beaten by Sauber in qualifying. Everyone laughed at us, said we were mental, but no, we saw it coming.
They've got a bit of a turn of pace now, but we'll touch on that during the race if you can.
Yeah. But 2 stops for wings.
For wings. Not Buffalo.
2 wing stops, I think, could be good. What I know is that this setup is a lot happier on the super softs than the ultra softs, which is unusual.
Ooh, nice. I'm really worried starting 10.
but yeah, I'd be building Haas around K-Mags at this point. And I'm not saying that, like, it sounds very reactionary, right? That he's had a few good rounds right off Grosjean, but I'm writing off Grosjean on the basis of, aside from his first season at Haas, which again was up and down. It was quite mercurial, but this year has been absolutely dire, I think.
Yeah.
The brake problems. He's never seemed happy in the car.
And the way how he is so aggressive on the radio, and everything's always something else's fault or someone else's fault. It's never a we, it's a you. And I think you can't have a good environment in that kind of accusationary thing. You solve stuff together, even if your team doesn't necessarily build the car, so therefore doesn't know what's actually wrong with it.
Interesting thought here. That I agree, that is a bad temperament for a Formula One driver, but it is an excellent temperament for a French chef. One who might release a cookbook. Maybe he's found his true calling.
The physics in the air have pushed my cakes off the plate. My feet breaks are so bad.
Like blaming everyone around you. That's very high pressure chef in the kitchen kind of territory. Maybe that's why we're seeing him release a cookbook.
Maybe we could have Oh, what's his name? The bad-tempered chef that always F's and blinds.
Gordon Ramsay.
That's it. Grosjean Ramsay. Would you not tune in for that? Would you not?
Yes, I would. I would, actually. I really would. I have both of them head to head.
What are you? A Haas sandwich? Where it's got like the meme with the 2 slices of bread over the head.
And give, have them go head to head, and, Romain Grosjean can complain about the brakes, and Gordon Ramsay can lie about playing for Glasgow Rangers.
Yeah. They've got to go out in the Haas's and then flip an omelette. Oh, hang on, what was that? How's Paddock? Says James. I like it. I like it a lot.
But I just wanted to give K-Mags a bit of a shout out.
Overlooked, I think. Much needed.
He's been forgotten. Something that I think Van Dorn's running the risk of if Renault.
I think he's sorted himself out now that Alonso. He's matching Alonso quite regularly now, because Alonso, we all know, is no slouch and he likes to shout it out. I'm going to be quiet around these first couple of corners.
Yeah, me too. Oh, this is so scary. Van Dorn, I was about to say nice things about you. Why are you hitting me? Right, my goal for this race is to finish ahead of the Saubers. That's all I care about.
Okay. Ooh, Perez just gave Massa a nice little slap.
That sounds like something that could happen out of the car as well.
Oh, Sainz, you little shitbag.
I slap in your face.
Okay, I got round the corner, but I've never done 3 alongside each other around Lowe's hairpin, and we've all survived. I feel like I've gone to Weight Watchers.
That's the first wing down.
Oh no!
It's okay, the car actually doesn't handle too badly. I've got so much downforce on it that half the front wing can do the job of a normal full front wing. Where are you, me old China?
I am still in P10.
Glamorous.
But starting a 2017 Trilly train, only with me. Teammate in the pits.
I'm pitting for some clear air in the new wing, and maybe I can make some time back.
Yeah.
Okay, so since I'm going to be running in clear air, I can start doing some talking. We wanted to talk about Sauber, and then we'll get on to Williams and Massa and the engine formula.
Yes.
So let's talk Sauber first of all. You and I did imply that we expect to see Sauber's fortunes turn around, actually, and there's a lot of very good reasons for that.
Yes.
And it seems Sauber's investors are on board with the idea, even though we don't work for the team, because they're spending the money now in a way that they've been reluctant to historically. But they have unlocked quite a bit of pace, and while we're talking about drivers who have been pulling their weight recently, the Merrickson.
Yeah! We love a bit of Merrickson
good.
on this show, don't we?
We love the Merrickson. And I voted for him as driver of the day in Mexico. How good was he, really?
Which was well deserved. Ah, shit, is that my wing? No, not yet. Oh, Kvyat, you fucking missile. Yeah, he was great. Running in the points for most of the early part of the race. Had a bungled pit stop, which was a bit of a shame. But well outperforming Pascal. Well outperforming the car. Another stonking race. I'd forgot that last year he drove the entire Grand Prix at Mexico and done a really good job on one set of tyres after pitting at the end of lap 1. So clearly he has a good affinity with the Mexican circuit. But yeah, he done really, really well.
He does, but again, it's also not a blip, is it? Because he had a good race the race before.
Yeah,
He's outqualified Pascal 3 for 3 in the last rounds.
Yep.
And what a time to do it, right? When Sauber are considering their options for next year. I think he may have actually gone some way towards saving his drive.
Yeah.
Genuinely, because ideally the investors want him there, right? Because they're his primary sponsors.
Yes.
But there's a lot of pressure and a lot of incentive to take two Ferrari drivers.
Yes.
It's all but confirmed that Wehrlein is out because Frederic Vasseur was basically saying Charles Leclerc is in the car next year.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said it without saying it, obviously, but he did.
Yeah.
And that talks were ongoing about a second seat for Giovinazzi.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I think a lot of Ferrari fans would like to see Leclerc and Giovinazzi go head-to-head, but Ericsson, I just think he has to stay.
I'd like to see
there's
him
no... Yeah, or send him to Williams.
Yep, that was... You just took the words out of my chops. Because...
he comes with money, he's got 2 functional arms and doesn't have ginger hair.
And he's over 25, I think?
Yes, I believe he is. Because I mean, there's really nowhere for him to go, and I don't know. I think he's probably a good pair of hands for Sauber to have around,
especially with, in terms of continuity, changing over of stuff. Because then I guess for me, when you've got a mind you, I suppose this goes back to the whole I haven't got this drive just because my investors are invested in the team and they're my sponsors, because clearly that's not the case. But
no,
I wonder how much... mind you, I guess I'm answering my own question before I say it, sorry. I was going to say how much of an impact this you're not getting your 100 million will have on Ferrari wanting to put 2 drivers in a Sauber and make effectively a junior Ferrari team again out of it.
Well, I still think they'll do that, but they probably won't pay for both the seats. I still think it will be a de facto Ferrari junior team.
Yeah.
That's my assessment, based on nothing. But I do genuinely see it that way. But it's interesting that basically Pascal is out, and almost nobody disagrees with that assertion. And now, it's interesting for a team like Sauber to have its pick of very good drivers, to be honest. I rate Giovinazzi very, very highly. We all rate Charles Leclerc incredibly highly. Pascal Wehrlein, even though I think he's a bit of a douchebag,
he's good.
I can still look at him and say, okay, he's a good driver. He's maybe not the world beater he was supposed to be, but he's a top level driver.
Yeah.
And okay, Ericsson probably isn't in the league of those guys, but he's there and doing it. And this is his 4th season in F1, 3rd, 4th.
Yeah, he for me is it's his 4th. He for me is the Pedro Diniz of this decade. Give him a chance. Let him learn. Let him improve year on year. It's the kind of thing that I was hoping Palmer would have shown this year. Is that leap of improvement from year on year with experience, respect, and trust. And Ericsson, despite doing some absolute doozy moments this year, which I think he could have done without, I think it's been all right. So yeah.
Yeah, and he has consistently improved. I feel bad now for mocking him when he was signed from Caterham to Sauber, because I remember the exact quote I said, which was that Sauber had said they've seen real flashes of quality in his driving, and I said that what they probably mean, that's a typo. They probably mean they've seen real flashes of 20 to 25 million pounds. But regardless of whether that was true at the time or not, I certainly think he's never going to be a world champion. But for a small team that needs the money, I think he's a relatively safe pair of hands at this point.
Yeah.
And there's always been a space in F1 for guys like that.
Yes.
That said, I could see him being out of the sport at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I could see Sauber taking the two Ferrari juniors. And I tell you who's going to be very upset if that happens would be Grosjean and Perez, because they were supposed to be the heirs apparent to Kimi's seat alongside Ricciardo now. Is supposed to be on the Ferrari radar. He's also supposed to be on Mercedes radar.
Yeah, how much?
Which
He
seems
said that he wouldn't
odd
mind
when
him
they
for a teammate.
Yeah, which is very odd because they've got Ocon, and Ocon is murdering it right now. For me, Ocon is one of my stars of the year.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, you know, now they've got out of the habit of slapping each other on track. They're an incredibly strong driver pairing.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And what was I going to say? I think, isn't it really, really fascinating that Sauber have a better pick of drivers than what Williams do?
Yes. Although Williams say they are considering any driver that's qualified, including Daniel Kvyat, who Paddy Lowe name dropped by name.
Yes.
So apparently they're considering Kvyat, which is amazing because who said wouldn't Kvyat make an amazing Williams driver?
Ooh, wouldn't that be?
It was us.
Yeah.
It was us. 4 weeks ago. I get the feeling that people actually watch the show.
I think we should just rename this the F1 Oracle.
Yeah. I don't actually think the deal will come off because I don't think Red Bull will pay to put him there, and I don't think he's good enough on talent alone right now.
No.
I still do think it would be a good fit, but he's just a hard sell. I believe I should rephrase that. I believe he has the talent to be good at Formula One, and he's shown it.
Yeah.
But he's in such a bad place psychologically right now that it's a hard sell without some sort of financial backing.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But should we get onto that? So obviously Felipe Massa has announced his retirement. This time he jumped before he was pushed, and there was no guarantee that Williams was going to push him. But I respect him immensely for what he's done, because it was no secret he wanted to be at Williams next year. He was very open about that. But what he said is I want you to make a decision before the Brazilian Grand Prix because I need to know if it's going to be my last. And they said, okay. And then as the time got closer, they said, no, we're not going to work on your timescale. So he has taken things into his own hands and decided, well, I will retire. So big respect to Felipe for that. He's been treated, I think, terribly by Williams, given what he's done for them.
Yep.
You know, they pushed him out. He didn't want to retire. He came back all smiles, all friends again when they asked him, when they lost Bottas.
Yep.
And since then, I think they've underappreciated his consistency, the strength of his performances, because the guy hasn't missed a beat, really.
No.
And they've done everything in their power to find a way to get away from him, and I feel that does Felipe a great disservice for someone who has been unfailingly loyal to that team.
Yeah.
And they were a good fit for each other.
Yeah.
I mean, no one thought when he went to Williams that he was going to have the renaissance in his career that he did. You know, it was a real resurgent time for Felipe Massa.
Yeah, I agree. And I keep on seeing people saying, oh, it's overdue, he's done nothing this year, he's barely matched Stroll on points. You need to look at the amount of bad luck that he's had in races with punctures and like retirements from really strong points paying positions that Stroll... Martin Brundle put it really well in the Mexican Grand Prix. Stroll is famine or feast, and there is nothing in between. It's like he can, if you get him into like a third or fourth position, he can drive it perfectly, but then he can't actually overtake anyone when he's down at 16th to get back there in like an actual car. It's really weird. He lacks the racecraft, I think, in F1 to be able to show that he can overtake and do the goods. And Massa has sat there and collected lots and lots of 8th and 9th points by being that consistency all the way throughout. And I think it's... I feel like we need to be part of like the Massa service crew of saying, actually, the guy is still pretty damn amazing. And he easily had another year in him. So no, I'm glad that he's done what he's done. And I think it shows the measure of the man, actually, this year.
Yes, it does. And... I mean, he is, alongside Jenson Button and Daniel Ricciardo, one of the nice guys of F1. Yes. Everyone likes him. No one's got a bad word to say about him. No. And, I'm going to hold my hands up and say, I thought he should retire when Ferrari got rid of him. I was actually quite vocal in calling for his retirement. And I regret that now, thinking about, all the drives he's had since that we would have been robbed of. Mm-hmm. Particularly... the end of 2014, 2015, where the Williams was arguably the fastest car, and he was catching Lewis.
There was some great drives.
Now that brings us on to his successor, and the shortlist has grown.
It's not a short list anymore, is it?
No, because
it's a big shot.
Previously, the common wisdom was it was Di Resta or Kubica.
Yes.
And we said, on that basis, there is absolutely no point in getting rid of Massa.
Yeah.
Now the list has increased to include Daniel Kvyat. Mm-hmm. It now contains as well Pascal Wehrlein, although I'm told that Williams don't want him. And it also includes, if we are to be believed, Marcus Ericsson.
We've decided that Marcus Ericsson is on that list.
No, but I mean, he has to be because Paddy Lowe's own criteria was anyone who's capable and is going to be free.
Yeah, and he comes with
he's
a
being
budget.
Considered, so by definition, he's being considered. I just want to point out that I was capable of following you for 2 laps quite nicely and smoothly, and then the Saubers got in my way, and Pascal Wehrlein took my end plate off, and I had to stop for wings again.
Oh no!
So I was very impressed at you overtaking those 2 Saubers actually, because I cannot overtake around here.
Wehrlein was scary. Ericsson, actually, I was quite impressed with myself because there wasn't any contact.
What position are you in, Chief?
I'm now in 17th. I can see the pitters just about ahead of me from before. And they've all come out on ultra soft, so they'll be pitting again. So 2 stop is the way, it seems.
I have to say, you have impressed me by holding onto your wing.
I pitted early because I'd lost an end play.
Oh.
I'd got hot in with Kvyat.
What's annoying me now is that I've been lapped by Perez, but I'm able to stay within a reasonable distance of him. And I feel I said I wasn't going to talk about this on air, but I feel that we should. Because before we went on air, Simon and I usually have like a 10-15 minute chat to talk about what the episode's going to be about and so on. And before we get back onto Williams and whatnot, I was talking about that this weekend was the first time I've ever driven public multiplayer in an F1 game. Because, when you spend the best part of a decade presenting a podcast called The Failcast, and the majority of that show is you binning it in stupid places, then you tend to sort of assume that you're going to be a health hazard to everyone around you in public multiplayer. And what I discounted was the virtue of practice. Like, we're never going to be, world's fastest gamer level, of course not. But I was staggered in public multiplayer to find that we're in the top whatever percent. I mean, I consistently rate you higher than me. I think you're a much better driver than I am. 8 times out of 10. And I was able to win a race from 17th position because I skipped quali. I wasn't allowed in quali. And I made it to first and won the race.
Nice.
And I never in a million years thought that would happen. And I did 5 races that day, and I won every single one. And it's a very bizarre feeling for me. I don't like it.
Did you go for a wash afterwards? Wash me clean.
Well, I think it's just that when we're doing this, we're not just driving. We're also trying to host a podcast, and we're trying to think of smart things to say, and we're trying to make a coherent point and actually listen to each other and the comments people make.
Yeah.
And so you're not really putting your full focus into driving. And I make a lot fewer mistakes playing single player offline than I do here, but because of the nature of playing video games on the internet, people will always call you out for the stupid mistakes and the bad moments. And I've spent 8 years being shouted at by strangers for not changing my tyres in the pits in quali.
Yes.
Or for taking stupid lines or braking at the wrong point. And I just set the fastest sector 1 of anybody.
Wow.
Nice. I can be fast here, but it's 1 lap in 100.
We're considering switching to an alternate strategy.
Do
you want to change or stick to plan A?
That you just sort of come to take it as read that you're just bad at the game. But it turns out that most people haven't played at least one full season every year for 8-9 years. And so just by virtue of being in that level of practice, we're actually not too bad, so well done us.
Yay!
Like K-Mags or Marcus Ericsson, we are underestimated.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, I must be quite fast because I've caught up to the Saubers and they haven't pitted.
Oh wow, you really have gone for it.
My new fastest lap is a 1:18.364. I don't know how that compares to you, sir, but I suspect it's slower.
Only 3 attempts, 1:18.088 is my fastest apparently. I don't know when I've done
That's
that.
as close as I'm going to get to you. My fastest lap ever round here on Ultrasofts was a 1:17, and you put in a 1:15.3 in quali.
Here we go, lots of people pitting.
Verline's got past Merrickson.
1.8 seconds.
No walk on. Thank you. Ooh, that was weird. Yes. So if you do find this entertaining, please do let people know whether you or not you like or like, comment, share, all that shit, because it's nice to see people that are new that are commenting. Someone commented on our last episode, and they are a fan of your Grand Prix World playthrough, and then came across and saw us on
That's
this
wonderful.
channel, and was like,
I tell you what, I get a lot of love for that series, and I still haven't finished it. I keep meaning to. Honestly, you'd be surprised. Like my mailbag in my Gmail account is actually resplendent with very, very nice feedback from people. You always think of people on the internet as being essentially dicks, but that's not been my experience, I'm pleased to say.
good. There are nice people out there. I think we cultivate generally the nicer people because we don't shout and scream, and we take the piss out of those that do.
No, I mean, I always love hearing from people, and I think that series was the right one to do. I think retro Formula One in particular gathers a certain like-minded crowd. So
yeah,
it's nice to share your interests, right? It's nice to hear from people who like the things you like and want to talk about it with you and share it with you. And of course, for us, we had that really good year in 2014, I think, where we were getting a lot of nice comments and feedback and stuff, and then we had some scheduling problems and we sort of fell out of sync with ourselves a little bit, and we've never really recovered to the same viewer numbers, but the people that are still here are all, very wonderful people who, it's always pleasant to hear from them. I don't think we've ever had any, really stupid opinions or anybody who doesn't know what they're talking about. It's quite a knowledgeable group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 out of 10. But yeah, we're off topic. Let's return to the Williams situation. Now, I'm not entirely sure who Williams are going to go for. I think this is one of the few times we've had an open seat, and I can't narrow it down. Because honestly, I could see a headline with any of those 4 names, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. No, you're right, and because they're all it sounds really blasé, but because it's a little bit of a the muchness, in my opinion, I kind of am a bit blasé that they could, I don't know, Sakon Yamamoto may appear from out of nowhere, and I'd be like, well, of course.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
A wild Sakon Yamamoto appears.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, to be honest, that is what it is, right? And what we know about non-competitive Williams compared to competitive Williams is that they have historically always made left field choices when recruiting drivers. So they discover Nico Hulkenberg. He gets a pole position in the rain. Then they fire him.
Yes.
They take on Kazuki Nakajima to get engines. He has a dismal season. Sign him up for round 2, boys. A seat comes available in 2009. I think we need some young talent, so why don't we call Rubens Barrichello?
Yeah.
They have consistently made the odd choice, and sometimes it's paid off in the case of Felipe Massa, but more often than not, it hasn't.
Yeah.
And that's why part of me could see them taking on Paul di Resta.
Yes, exactly.
Because out of the 4 of them,
he's the most boring.
I think he's the least exciting prospect.
Yes, exactly. And I think I know it's echoing what you're saying, but all I can see is them like sitting in a boardroom going, which is the one that would be the most inoffensive person that we could possibly do, who will be as close under the radar and probably be as boring as hell, because it's you're right, they do some proper weird decisions. And what was I going to say? I think the sad thing is that I will be bored with whoever they go for, I think, and I've accepted that fate.
Well, this is the thing about Williams, right? Now, there are teams that I've got a huge fondness for because, I grew up like you did watching Formula One of the early 90s.
Yeah.
I think 95 is probably the first season that I remember like from the time particularly clearly, but I've been watching since sort of 1990, 1989. And so I grew up with Damon Hill, World Championship in 1996, hugely memorable for me. Then Jacques Villeneuve in 1997.
Yeah.
There's a driver that sort of peaked too soon, isn't it?
Yes. That's like, yeah.
But I always considered Williams, and I still do. I think anyone who grew up with that Williams team still considers them a big player, and I don't know why. I don't think they've done anything in the last 10 years to justify that label.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not one of the big boys of F1 anymore, but I still instinctively include them in the list of big teams.
In the hope of a resurge that just doesn't ever seem to come.
Yeah, and this is a problem of modern Williams that, I talk about him regularly. My Dutch work colleague, who I talked Formula One with during the week, he's not as big a long time F1 fan, and he's got into it really since sort of 2014 onwards. He's been really following it again, but he was always sort of aware of it, and he's always complaining to me about Williams. They're the team that he thinks is the single most boring on the grid, and he wouldn't miss them if they were gone. And part of me thinks, heresy, blasphemy, how dare you? How very dare you, sir? But at the same time, if I look at it objectively, could I blame him for holding that opinion?
No.
Aside from Pastor Maldonado's win in Barcelona, which again is like a Williams win should have been a feel-good event, but if there's one driver who could ruin a feel-good event, it's Pastor Maldonado, and that's who did it. Like, they even got winning wrong. And these days, like, I can't help but think that he's right, because it is a boring team.
Do you think that's because of the corporate floating on the stock market? We have shareholders, therefore we can't be seen to ever be daring to do anything.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like, because
it's transitioned to like a racers team that was headed by Frank to being a corporate juggernaut that is accountable to shareholders. And I wonder if somewhere in there's been a bit of a personality transplant that's not really worked.
I mean, it could be the case. I'm not going to say it's not, but
Don't forget, pit in this lap.
I don't know, it's just that the whole package is boring. Like, I remember when they unveiled the Martini sponsorship in 2014, and you and I were tweeting about it and said, good God, that's a good looking car, we should drive that in the Failcast, which we never did, by the way.
No,
and I thought it was a really good looking car, and I thought, oh, I'm going to like this Age of Williams. But the same guy said to me, don't you think the livery is really boring? And I look at it now and think, actually, yeah, it is a bit. That, like, the whole thing is just cheese and pickle sandwiches somehow.
it's very British.
Yeah, but like, it's not like the off the wall comedy cider in the pub kind of British. It's the tweed and hunting spaniel kind of British.
I know what you mean.
And that's not good.
Drape a deer over the rear wing. That'll liven it up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I fully expect the pits to be full of high-backed leather chairs and brass.
Yeah. It's like if Vettel drove for that team and he named his cars, one might be called Penelope if it was racy, but the other one would be called like Tabitha or Lawrence or Horace.
Yeah, it's a Tabitha team.
Yeah.
Hortensia. And I don't know if it's a funk they can really get themselves out of. And, you could be inclined to say, well, surely, guys, you're being a little bit unfair to Williams here. That there's more to it than branding. Yeah, absolutely there is, but they don't help themselves with their decisions.
Okay.
And we've called it, haven't we? I mean, the more I talk about it, the more I think it's completely true that 2 or 3 weeks from now they'll unveil Paul di Resta in a smoking jacket, petting a spaniel and holding a pint of bitter as their new driver, and then he'll go out and he'll just do laps.
Yeah. Sponsored by UKIP.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, no, it'll be sponsored by a real ale brewery.
Yeah, that's true. But one that
And,
you
you
can
know,
only
in
get
fact-
in a specialist brewery because we only deal with stakeholders.
Well, it's like we said, the Martini British connection. Like, there's a whole James Bond angle there.
Yes.
That they, if they partnered up with Aston Martin, or bring Jaguar back into F1. Not even as an engine supplier, just brand title. There's all this like potential on the table, this cool, sexy, interesting potential that the team just seems allergic to.
And that's the kind of stuff that would write its own publicity, sponsorship.
Well, it would. I mean, the thing is, right, when you think of Martini, right, even though the Martini James Bond drinks is not Martini, regardless, right, Martini, you think harbour at Monte Carlo.
Yep.
You just do. Or you think, like, Milan Fashion Week. Like, there's something
I don't think
the
old man in
brand.
a cap with a beagle.
No, you don't. And can you think of a driver who's any less Martini than Paul Di Resta? or for that matter, Lance Stroll.
Oh,
Captain
those
Eyebrows.
Yeah.
Do you know what he reminds me of?
He reminds me of Thunderbirds.
He reminds me of former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Alistair Darling.
Oh, darling.
And by proxy, he reminds me of a badger.
Superb.
I mean, like, seriously, after this is done, and anyone watching right now, just do a Google image search of Lance Stroll and tell me he doesn't look like a badger. Because he does. Now I've got the theme tune to Bodger and Badger going on in my head.
Ah, no, that's Britain.
So yeah, they seem to be having this real problem with their branding, and I don't think they can fix it in the short term. Also, I don't know what's going on with them right now, because I know Claire's obviously taking time out to have a baby, and then there's this sort of who's in charge now? Is it Rob Smedley? Is it Paddy Lowe?
Mm-hmm.
No one seems entirely sure. Paddy Lowe is making all the statements, but Rob Smedley's in the garage, pointing and shouting at people. I don't know. I think it's a team that... I think it's a team for whom the phrase "lost in the wilderness" was created.
Yes.
Because I think it's the one team that doesn't really have direction. And it's very hard to be able to say that from without, but... Do you know what I mean? Do you get the same sense?
I don't know where they're going to be in 5 years' time.
Exactly.
Do they continue to align with Mercedes? Do they still have a Martini sponsorship which is dictating their driver lineup and making sure that they now have to pick between Mr. Boring, Mr. Captain Pirate, and Monsieur Polish Saucisson? It's very difficult to understand kind of where their ethos and where they sit in the future is, and kind of where they're going to, how they're ever going to improve.
Yeah. I mean, all we know for sure is that Paddy Lowe has come in and said, this car, throw it in the bin.
Which
and he said next year's
long.
car... Yeah, next year's car has to be brand new, because whatever we've got here, we don't understand how it works.
Yeah.
Right? And to be fair, like, if I was Paddy Lowe, I'd have made the same decision, right?
Yeah.
Because Williams' problem is either they're very fast or they're very slow. They're never sort of in between.
Yeah.
It's either top six or at the back.
Or 16th, yeah.
Tickling the top six at least. Maybe 7th or 8th here and there, but they're either surprisingly quick or surprisingly slow. They're never just average.
And there used to be a correlation, didn't there, between downforce for that, and this year that's not been the case at all.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they can't even get inconsistency right this year.
No, they're inconsistent at inconsistency. How fucked up must it be?
And so, I would throw that out as well. because we always criticised Williams because they figured out how to do low downforce really well, but then they forgot how to do high downforce.
Yes.
And they overplayed the strong hand in their deck repeatedly. And for the next 2 years, they coasted on points gained at low downforce circuits where they could run the car slippery. And we said that's no way to run a team. You have to take a more holistic approach because you're dropping. It's not about the points you're winning; it's about the points you're dropping.
Yeah.
Because if you're only relying on 40% of the circuits of the year for your points, then an accident there carries such a huge penalty compared to what it should. That you're loading your risk. And the thing is, like, the only exciting, sort of semi-exciting choice there is not Paul di Resta, it's Robert Kubica. But I don't trust them to make that decision. And again, I'm not one of those people who thinks it will work out if they did. Like, I honestly can't say that I'm confident that Kubica will deliver. And I say that as someone who loved watching Kubica in the Renault and the Sauber. A lot of people forget he was a Sauber driver, but that was when Sauber were up there still. I want him. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say the interesting thing for me around Kubica is that he worked really well when Sauber was BMW Sauber, so he's been in that corporate clinical environment and knows how it works. So there's kind of a bit of a he gets it kind of vibe that might work out well for him.
Well, also he's just. It's like debut season Romain Grosjean. He's just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Do you remember how happy and smiley he was back then, back before the real world came to knock?
Yeah.
And so, as much as I love Kubica, and I'd love, to see him back in Formula One and competitive, the cynic in me just doesn't believe it's going to happen. Okay, with 9 laps remaining, well, we touch on the main topic. We've actually managed to jam-pack this episode.
We have. It's been quite chatty.
It has, considering we're at Monaco, and normally that's our weakest episode of the year. I rate this as one of our strongest.
Yeah.
So, the new engine regulations came out, or proposed engine regulations, and this is part of the reason Ferrari are throwing their toys out of the plan.
Yes.
Every engine manufacturer, with the bizarre exception of Honda, seems to be taking offence with these new regulations, which, I'll be honest with you, I haven't gone through their statements in detail, so there's probably a very pragmatic and smart reason for this, and if anyone watching knows what those reasons are, please do chime in now. But essentially what I understood it as is, well, you spent a lot of money on the engines for this formula, so we're going to keep the basic power unit. So the power unit will be a 1.6 litre V6. They're going to up the rev limit by 3,000 RPM to improve the noise, which again, everyone was asking for that.
Yeah.
They're changing the rules so that there's no more 2-stage turbochargers. It's a single turbocharger, so reducing cost and complexity. Again, what people were asking for.
Yeah.
And I forget which one it is. It's either the MGU-H or the MGU-K is being
retired
dropped.
at the chicane, I think.
So yeah, either the MGU-H or the MGU-K is dead.
Yeah.
And again, that reduces cost and complexity. But apparently no one seems happy with it, and I don't know why, because what Renault was saying was, well, I think it's because the rules open up competition again. I think like the development limitations are being lifted, because they said, well, we're concerned that, okay, we're getting value for what we've invested so far, great, but we're going to have to spend a lot more to stay competitive because, now engine development is going to be opened up a little bit, which I think the sport needs, to be honest, to challenge Mercedes.
Yes.
At the same time, the new proposals include a cost cap for the teams. which I wasn't sure Liberty were going to walk the line with. Now, I haven't seen anywhere the exact figure. All I know is that the regulations propose a cost cap. So I'd be interested as more information comes out about that, but I think we all agree something has to be done to keep the smaller teams in the sport. So the only thing I can think of is maybe the regulations are bad for the works teams because they have to cut costs running the team itself, but they have to spend more than that on engine development. That's the only thing I could think of that would be causing this reaction, right? Because F1 has done... It really is a compromise solution, right? Because the fans said bring back naturally aspirated V8s. The car companies say no, we need some form of hybrid technology or else it's not worth the investment. Oh shit, lost another wing. I was doing so well as well. And so this to me strikes me as like a compromise solution.
Yeah.
Because the money they've already spent on development isn't thrown away. You can keep using the units you've got. And then it also improves the show for the fans because it's making, first of all, it's making engines a lot more reliable, right? Because, you know, you're taking out one of the most complicated components of the power units.
Yeah.
And it's good for the teams because it should bring the individual cost of a power unit down. So to me, it sounds like, you know, win-win-win-win-win.
Yeah.
But
Okay, the safety car is out. The safety car is out.
Safety car.
the engine manufacturers do not seem happy with it, and I'm keen to understand why, but I'll figure it out later.
Interesting.
But what? Drive-through penalty speeding under safety car? Shit.
Oh no.
But I couldn't speed under safety car, I was in pit lane.
The board has been out for a wee while.
Nah.
Never
Well,
mind.
now's a good time to serve my drive-through penalty at least.
Will it let you under safety car?
Well, I guess it might, because apparently it lets you change tyres in the top 10 now, so...
Yeah, I saw that on the change release.
Anywho,
Yes.
so this also brought in an interesting discussion about, and it sounds mental, four-wheel drive Formula One.
Yeah, that sounds really weird. It's something I've never ever thought of or even vaguely considered, because for me, four-wheel drive is... I'm instantly thinking of touring cars and Jason Plato smashing into everyone at high velocity. And so, like, I don't even know how to react to that as even a concept or a thought. Do you have any particular
Sorry,
ideas?
I'm being told to pass Marcus Ericsson.
Oh, it's you. Hello.
Oh, Harrow, are you behind me?
Oh, yeah.
You're lapping me, aren't you? Pass Ericsson, okay. Pass Kvyat. Oh,
I've been told to
lap
pass
myself.
you.
What?
Oh no,
What?
it's
What?
not now. I think it's just having a little lagalicious moment. Oh my god.
Pass him, then give the position back. What?
Yeah, I'm getting that for you. I think we should just stay still.
Yeah. I think the race is going to finish on the safety car, which means I'm going to finish last, despite being
not.
faster than Ericsson.
It's not.
Hmm?
It won't. I think they're going to pull off with a lap to go. Ah, shit.
Do you know who brought out the safety car?
I think it was Ricciardo, because we had a three-way collision into the chicane, and then I noticed that
I
he was
saw him
stuck
in a
at the
barrier,
chicane.
but he was driving out. Well, anywho, this comes about because people were complaining about all the costs that went into developing KERS, and then KERS was dropped from the cars.
Yes.
So the proposal, and I don't believe it made the final regulations, but I want to talk about it because I still think it's a very interesting prospect. The proposal was to have the engine that is being proposed in the current regulations, the new regulations, sorry, have that engine.
Yeah.
Safety car's in this lap. And then to have an electric motor for each front wheel. So, in essence, a four-wheel drive F1 car.
Which sounds really weird.
And part of me was kind of excited by the prospect, but then I thought about the actual effect. And it struck me that actually this was probably going to ruin a lot of racing, because if you imagine... Go on, there you go, blue flag.
Thank you.
Because, yeah, if you think about it, how bad is it in the wet weather with two-wheel drive cars? That's part of the show. I think having four-wheel drive cars would... They'd be so planted that I think something will be taken away from the show. That said, the argument for it from the other sense is, well, suddenly the cars are not so dependent on aerodynamics. Because you're getting that extra mechanical traction is going to offset a loss of downforce when following cars. And because they were talking about it in terms of KERS, it made me wonder if this wasn't permanent four-wheel drive, like if this was deployable four-wheel drive. So you charge the batteries and then you discharge them through these motors on the front wheels. So, much like DRS, you are following a car closely, you're starting to lose downforce, you can't keep with them, so then you deploy these KERS motors, and suddenly, you have the grip to race them. And when it's couched in those terms, I actually like it as an idea. But then the other thing is, having that in is going to generate a lot of reliability problems. We're already seeing the problems with the high amounts of electrical power that are held in F1 cars as it is. Like in Mexico, where Nico Hulkenberg's race engineer was having a heart attack, telling him, "No, Nico, you need to get out of the car, but get out of it a special way, because otherwise it will electrocute you to death."
Yes.
And then, of course, there's, it's just one more thing to go wrong with the cars. I'm sure as well there's a lot of cost in a car build that includes that. I see a McLaren end plate.
You'll see a lot of my car, sadly.
What position are you in?
I'm now 16th because Kvyat pushed me round at Mirabeau.
I've run out of fuel.
Oh no!
So just caps off an amazing race.
So proud, so proud.
Normally I'm so good on fuel that I never even have to think about it.
I always run really. I had to do mix 1 on my second stint for a little while.
I wasn't even paying attention to my fuel. I never think about it because normally I'm so good on it.
Here and Azerbaijan are the only two places where I run minus.
Well, never mind. I have to. I was going to finish last anyway because of my drive-through. So.
Oh, I love it. Who's watching you crawl?
It's not a glorious finish.
Love it.
The participation award goes to Ben.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
But never mind, because neither of us got any points in that episode, so I don't feel too bad.
No, I was on for 12, but sadly Kvyat and I got together at Mirabeau. Never mind.
So, yeah, boring, same old podium. Except Kimi Räikkönen wins in this game for some reason.
What?
So, closing thoughts then. What do you make of these engine regs? Got any feelings on them?
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, actually, around how actually in theory it should be win-win-win-win-win. And there must be something around the cost implication, because if you're putting in a budget cap, that it then seems stupid to imply a budget cap whilst then ripping lots and lots and lots of new engine parts in. That kind of negates a lot of the budget cap, because in 5 years' time they'll be like, oh, there's a new formula of Formula One, and then everything gets ditched again. So you just kind of think, come on, a bit of consistency and a bit of forethought would actually go a hell of a long way to actually making something work really nicely. I don't know quite what I think about a four-wheel drive Formula One, and your comment about wet racing is really, really interesting, because I wouldn't have even thought about how that affects wet racing and the unpredictability of it. And I guess as well, KERS can fail. Could KERS on a wheel fail on just one wheel, and what the hell would that do to a car? I guess brake-by-wire is a problem like that.
That occurred to me as well. Like, if you suddenly have a three-wheel drive car, I'm pretty sure that's a recipe for a nasty accident.
Yeah. So
the jury is out. But the regulations that have gone forward are ones that are not for four-wheel drive F1, and as far as I can tell, I like them. I mean, I need to hear how the engines sound with this extra 3,000 RPM and only one turbo, because that's supposed to have the dual effect of improving the sound of the engine, particularly losing that second turbocharger.
Yeah.
But also it reduces the cost and complexity of the power units. Presumably that's why Honda are not too upset, because they can't seem to get the twin turbocharged model working. I'm in favour of it, to be honest with you. All things considered, I'm a fan of the regulations that are being proposed. Whether it costs us Ferrari or not, I don't know. But I think where it comes in, and what we didn't talk about in the episode, was Ferrari being an engine supplier is a bigger factor, I think, than Ferrari as a team. Because suddenly we'd be down to 3 engine suppliers, and that would not, to me, be a viable Formula One.
Especially if we find that Honda is still not got used to the new formula, because then it's really only
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, but then again, we never know. Porsche and Aston Martin are supposed to be entering, Cosworth as well, either independently or as part of the Aston Martin thing. So who knows? I mean, I get the feeling that these regulations were crafted in a way to attract new suppliers, even if it comes at the expense of alienating one or two current ones.
Yeah.
My guess is Ross Brawn has a good handle on what's going to bring companies in, so I trust in the Ross. I think it'll come good. So before we dive out, interesting to see that our fastest laps, you are way faster than me, but
you was okay pace-wise.
My best lap time was still in the 1:17s.
Yeah. You did good. Which would have put you right up in with chance of points.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when I say I can't drive this track, I can drive this track for 1 lap or 2 laps. Like, occasionally it just comes together, but on any track, it's the slow corners that always get me. I'm really bad in the slow corners, and this is all slow corners. And if you screw up or you take the wrong line or something, where at other tracks, maybe across the lap, it only costs you a fraction of a tenth. Here it can cost you 3 or 4 tenths.
Yeah.
So it was never going to be a glorious one for me. I'm just happy I finished, because the last 2 years I haven't finished Monaco.
No, did good, sir.
And in fact, last year neither of us finished.
No, I remember that.
Yeah. We embarrassed ourselves properly there, so it's good. We both finished.
That was Failcast to the fore, and 4th and 6th in the Drivers' Championship, and we've gone from 1st to 3rd in the Constructors.
1st to 3rd. 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 1st to 3r Oh well, never mind. We're still 30 points clear of Force India for now.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine. And Canada's up next, and we normally don't do too badly there, if I remember.
Actually, Canada used to be one of my bogey circuits until this version of the game.
Ooh,
And here I'm fast for some reason.
nice.
So, yeah, that's good. That's about our 2 hours. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone that tuned in. No, James was sitting there chipping in occasionally, and actually we had multiple viewers on my side for once, which was joyous. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time for our roundup of... Is that going to be after Brazil? Yeah.
Yes, I think. Yeah, Brazil's next week, isn't it?
I think so.
Brazil's next week, and then we have an episode. Then it's Abu Dhabi, and then we have an episode.
Oh, it's almost like we planned it and everything and stuff.
It is almost like we planned it. And then, by the time the end of the season comes around, the episode after that, we will be onto a Christmas special. And I think we should do something special this year. We should do like a normal round, and then maybe have a classic invitational event, or we do something a bit special, and we get a bit Christmassy. We crack open the eggnog.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. And I recommend mince pie ice cream from Lidl's if anyone's got a Lidl nearby. It's bloody gorgeous. I've sampled.
Yeah, I mean, I've been sketching out some ideas for cool things to do, like certain events throughout the year. Try and get people involved a little bit more. I was thinking about moderating an F1 pub quiz. I thought we could do a pub quiz night.
Oh,
like,
nice.
Find gather up the regular viewers, find a good time for everybody, and we'll moderate a pub quiz, and we'll see who actually knows their stuff. I think that could be quite fun.
Yeah. I think I've got an old F1 DVD and book gift set that I got given twice at the same Christmas. But it's the same thing, but in a slightly different packaging. And then they bought it the following year and was like, "Hey, we know you like Formula One." I was like, I remember. How did you not know? You bought me this last year. We could use that as a giveaway, perhaps. So yeah, I like that idea. Woohoo! So yeah,
excellent.
Thank you.
So we can have pride.
Everyone. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's get that sorted. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Don't forget to check out Definitely Zero over on
twitch.tv/Definitely Zero, where we're doing career mode this week.
Oh, fab. Tune in for that. I'll be doing career mode next week. And Motorsport Manager continues on as usual. So, yeah. Take care, all. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was very British. I know. And McLaren are ahead of Renault. Renault are dead last.